All right, we are back here. More Halloween pop culture coverage. Join me today, the third member of the pop culture team, wrapping up the show with the great Alan Austin. Alan, how are you?
Good, Mike. Honored that you called me great. I really appreciate that. It's a pleasure being here as always.
Hey, if you guys take time to talk to me, you're great in my book.
Well, I appreciate that. Back at you.
Yeah. Before we get into the Halloween stuff, I want to touch on updates on a couple of things we talked about in the pop culture sphere in the past. Number one, the Big Brother All Star season just ended on Wednesday night. I want to toot my own horn that I won the Big Brother draft when Cody won 9-0. So I'm gonna give myself a little plug there. But your thoughts on the season as a whole?
I thought it was a boring, predictable season with a pretty interesting and effective finale.
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. The ride they get there, especially after they had that triple eviction, was very, very slow. But like the finale, the moment was great when Cody cut Nicole and her face just like dropped, and it was just glorious to watch.
It was probably the most interesting moment of the season.
Which is pretty.
That had to do with the gameplay.
Yeah.
I do feel that Cody felt bad about it. And coming into the house, he probably did say, I'm going to be loyal to Nicole and Memphis. And the way Memphis game played, it made it a little bit more easy to cut the cord with Memphis, where he doesn't feel guilty about it. But he really had no reason to turn on Nicole. And I bought the genuine sadness that he felt in clipping her.
Yeah, it was definitely a fun ending. It definitely deserved the win. And I do think I wrote a blog post this week about like ways that the game should be fixed. And I do think that they do have a problem on their hands. They actually care to fix it, which I'm not sure they do.
No, and they've got to make less HOH physicality comps. Yep. They've got to mix it up more. But I will say this, kudos to them to making the final HOH a little bit more of a competition as opposed to arbitrary answers that you just guess to win. That was way more effective than the scales of justice.
Yes, that was on my list of mixing up the competition types. I also think to get this better, I think you need to cast more fans of the game and not people who are running into the house to try and build up social media following after the game. And my big one is, I think, let me know what you think about this, is I think you have to find a way to try and kill off the idea of the perpetual pawn where like you just put the same person up every week because then nobody gets any real blood on their hands. Is I think my idea is like at least in the first half of the game or up until the jury phase, depending on how you pick it, if you survive the block, you're immune the next week. So they can't just keep throwing you up there.
I like that idea. Yeah. I think it should work until jury.
Yeah, because that way it forces you to spice the game up early because you can't just say like this year, like poor Kevin, as soon as he survived the first week, was just the go-to guy put on the block. Like, oh, you're the pawn. We're get rid of the other person on the block. And I think if you do that to Kevin and Kevin has immunity week 2, you're like, oh, I have to put somebody else up. I can't just throw Kevin up again.
Right, and it can be used strategically to have hey, I put you up as a pawn. More people will be willing if they know there's immunity the next week.
Yeah, it gives you the roll of the dice there. I do like that. I think that's something they should consider next year.
Yeah. Would you also include you can only be backdoored once? So if you survive the back door, which is rare, you can't ever be backdoored again. I guess that doesn't make sense because you're not getting backdoored unless you're going out, unless the person they are targeting puts themselves off the block. I don't know. There's a lot to think about here. You've got my wheels turning now.
Yeah, I think that's a discussion for another day. But the other one I want to get to is we talked about the Craig Carton documentary. We speculate about his return, WFAN. It's official now. He is going to be on WFAN starting on November 9th. He's pairing with Evan Roberts, 2 to 7s. Joe Beningo is retiring on the 6th. And what do you think of that pairing? How do you think it's going to work?
I don't really have a problem with it at first because I'm not... Look, there had been rumors that they were looking to pair Carton up with an ex-athlete, the likes of Willie Colon. I remember seeing his name. But when you look at other markets and when you look at fan itself, it's not always guy and athlete. There's no reason to think this won't theoretically work just because Evan Roberts is not an ex-athlete. Yes, Carton is a polarizing figure, but I think that will balance off well with the true sports fan that is Evan Roberts. Evan Roberts is more of the, for the lack of a better term, nerdy sports fan than say Carton is, but I think they'll be able to work with each other. And I think Evan, maybe not at first, but eventually will learn how to reel Craig in and balance the program out. So positively speaking, there's no reason for me to say, "Oh, this won't work." I'm going to sit back, see what we've got, and see what happens. I do think that right off the bat, Craig Carton is a must listen at the moment. So regardless of how they start, people will be listening and they will have an opportunity to get a groove going for sure.
Yeah, I do think it's a good choice to do it this way because I feel like if they try to get the athlete, they're just trying to recreate Boomer and Carton in the afternoon. I don't think that's the right play to do. I feel like that is best works in the morning, and I do think that sort of opposite dichotomy works where Evan's more of the straight sports talk guy, while Craig's more of the cartoon character, and they sort of balance each other out there. I think Joe has been a great listen for years, but Joe I do think has lost some miles off his fastball over the past couple of years, and his shtick does kind of get repetitive. So having a new dynamic in there could juice the ratings up for them.
And the fact that Craig and Evan have known each other for so many years definitely helps. They're not coming in blind. You know what I mean? They know each other. There is a history there. So that kind of helps the transition as well.
Yeah, plus you don't disrupt too much of the rest of the lineup because the Moose and Maggie midday show is sort of picking up its own. I think it's getting into a groove there where they sort of have an idea of how they want to do it, and it's good radio if you listen to it. I do think the Evan Joe was not made for afternoon drive, especially once the pandemic hit. And they couldn't just rely on straight sports. So I think Carton being in there, I think was a good change.
Yeah, and I'm glad that Mark Malusis gets to keep his spot with Maggie, and hopefully this becomes the lineup for years to come. And unless people on this station move on to bigger and better things and open up spots for people like us. But until then, this is going to be a pretty fun. I do wish there was a little more diversity amongst the shows, but what we've got is entertaining to say the least, and we'll hopefully it'll work.
Hopefully it will. And now we'll get to some of the Halloween fun, which is what you're here for, which is, first off, I want to get your take on Bly Manor. I talked about the premiere with you way back in mid-October. Sandra Rosa in the last segment just went through a deep dive into the show. What was your big takeaway from the season as a whole?
I enjoyed it. And I know there were a lot of complaints. I'm sure you and Sam covered it about the legitimate scares being taken out of this season. And I do think there was a lot of moving parts that did not need to be there, specifically the subplot with Rebecca and Peter Quint, which made me think of Homeland.
Yeah.
But Peter Quint and Rebecca, you spend so much time with them only for their story to ultimately get kind of discarded because of another event. Without saying too much, I guess I've already spoiled something.
Well, but, I mean, we talked about it. You can go into it if you want.
Oh, okay. So the fact that Peter Quint's this mastermind trying to have this scheme where him and Rebecca are able to leave Bly Manor as ghosts through the body of the children, but because the Lady of the Lake finds peace, they are suddenly in the afterlife and spirits, and it did not matter. Does that make it? Or unless I'm missing something?
No, that's you got it right.
Okay, so to spend that much time with them for it to not matter because the Lady in the Lake is more important, I thought was like whatever. But the hook that got me this season was the Danny ending. And, you know, without getting into the weeds, to see a character represented, her depression, her anxiety, her guilt, I thought the portrayal of that leading to her unfortunate demise was so moving. I was a big fan of the handling of the demons constantly creeping up on her and ultimately getting the better for her. I thought that was handled very well, and I was hook, line, and sinker rooting for Danny pretty much this entire season. So I will say, as a fan, people are going to disagree with me, but I thought the way Danny was handled this season, I was very, very happy with. And that and the acting alone were enough for me to say that this was a success. And the whole lack of scares, I mean, that talking point is negated by a line in the last season by the older Flora who says, "You lied," or you were wrong. This isn't a ghost story. It's a love story. And that right there, yeah, it might not be scary for people looking for scares, but there are certainly eerie elements told amongst this love story. And if you look at it objectively like that, I don't see how you don't at least recognize the quality of the product that was there.
Yeah, I definitely think there's something else that's wrong with Sam's. Obviously, like, this is a love story in disguise. They draw you in with the ghost. They do tell this love story. I do think it's more of a psychological thriller than what you got in season 1, which is more of a straight, like, haunted house story with all, like, the jump scares and the ghosts. I think it worked well for what it was trying to do, but, like, anybody expecting them to basically come in and do Hill House again was going to be very disappointed. Let's also talk about some other things here. I talked to Sam also about some Halloween costumes, pop culture-wise. What's your favorite, like, pop culture costume of all time?
I mean, I dressed as Goofy from ages like 4 to 8. So for me personally, my number one costume of all time is Goofy.
Yeah.
I was a huge Goofy nerd. My favorite cartoon characters of all time are Goofy and Daffy Duck. So I don't know if that sheds a little light into my personality, but my all-time favorite costume is Goofy. And I know that's not like a creative, like, whatever, but I will say that in college, I dressed as a cave woman being eaten by a dinosaur. And I borrowed the costume from my roommate at the time, who cut up a children's Baby Bop costume, put a T-Rex head on it, and it went over your arm onto your shoulder. So it's like you were being eaten at the arm shoulder area by the dinosaur, and dressed as a cave woman throughout.
Interesting. I will say that's definitely not well, I've gone down. I think some of my interesting ones in the past, obviously, I've done Jack Bauer in 24. I did that one year. I did Spock from the Star Trek movie, The New Boots. I liked doing that one. In terms of creativity, my best one was Mr. Monopoly.
Wow. Are there pictures of this anywhere?
I do not have a picture of Mr. Monopoly, that costume anywhere. There's a picture of me as a referee, though, somewhere on the internet.
Okay. I would love to have seen the Mr. Monopoly one.
Mr. Monopoly was great. I got the top hat. I basically like throwing Monopoly money out of a jacket pocket. It was fantastic.
And did you wind up in jail at the end of the evening?
No, I did not go to jail. I passed go and collected $200.
Oh, very nice. So you made money on it. What a great costume.
It was a fantastic costume. Yeah, and in terms of this year, obviously, this Halloween's going to be different because it's a pandemic Halloween. I assume you and I are both on the same page. We're both, like, socially responsible citizens. We're not going to be going out to, like, the usual parties we go to for Halloween. So what's your Halloween pandemic plan?
My Halloween pandemic plan is to, you know, me and my fiance and I will be going to my family's house to kind of do Halloween crafts on the patio. It might be a little cold, but we're going to suck it up and go there. No costumes, probably. It's a little late in the game. I was hoping to be Beetlejuice this year. Just don't think it's going to work. A little late in the game. Good thing about Halloween is, the thing about Halloween is you should probably pre-plan a costume, because if you think about going to Spirit Halloween or something at the last minute, you're never going to find something that you want. So I botched that. So we're just going to hang out. I don't think my family's going to be giving out candy this year. Just trying to limit any kind of irresponsibilities. So we're just going to hang out, do crafts, maybe have, like, my mom's obsessed with Hocus Pocus. Maybe have that on the background and just kind of hang out.
Yeah, it's like I did have a costume idea, but I don't know if it's going to make it on time thanks to the awesomeness of the postal service here. I did order the new Supermarket Sweep sweatshirt, so that's one I will be Supermarket Sweep contested for Halloween if it arrives on time.
Can you please just run around your kitchen throwing stuff in a bag as fast as possible?
Yeah, I just got to do that, send a tape to Leslie Jones, and he'll get on the show next season.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's your audition.
Yeah. By the way, have you checked out the new season of the show?
I have not yet. I've heard it's great.
It's a lot of fun. We get all kinds of craziness here like this.
And I'll give you an extra $500 if you can bring me the following items from my personal shopping list. I'm having a me night tonight. So I want a Glade scented candle, a spatula, and a cucumber. Don't ask me what none of it's for. It's me night.
Leslie Jones is literally on her game.
That is incredible. The casting of her as host was from the beginning a great choice. So I'm glad it's working out.
Yeah, and she is the most enthusiastic host I've ever seen of a game show. Like, she is so fired up to be there, and the contestants literally get fired up by her energy. And she said, like, one point she wanted to actually audition to be on the original show when David Ruprecht was hosting.
Wow, that's a funny fact.
Yeah, she's like, yeah, my knee. I can't do it now. My knees stink, but I'm happy to host and just give the contestants all the joy of running around the supermarkets, throwing things in willy nilly.
That's funny.
It's pretty good, and I do have it coming. Hopefully, it gets here on time. But since you are here, we do like to do some drafts on this show. Let's have a quick 4-round draft. We're going to do some Halloween-related pop culture content. If you want to stay home, this can be some sort of scary movie. It could be ghosting, whatever you qualify as Halloween. So the floor is really wide open to you. As they get to give you the first choice, what's your first Halloween go-to pick?
Okay, I'm going to go with my favorite horror film of all time. And people under the age of me, 31, may think that it's a little outdated, blah, blah, blah. But I think if you go in with an open mind, you will be properly scared. And that is my favorite horror film of all time, Poltergeist.
Ooh, good one. Why Poltergeist?
I think it's a pretty complete movie. You have the haunted house element. You have the Indian burial ground idea. You've got the filming with the real bones in the pool. And to go along with its horror theme, you've got the most cursed movie franchise ever. And I won't get into the deep dive of it on here right now, but Poltergeist, for being a horror film, it's a lot scarier than just what you see on screen. And as a kid, the clown doll scared me to death almost. And I just think it is so well timed. The acting's great. And to me, it's my favorite horror movie of all time.
Yeah, it's a good choice, number one. I'm going to take for my first pick, I'm not going to go directly horror yet, but I'm going to go with a good ghost story. And I want to have some fun, have some laughs. I'm going with the original Ghostbusters as my first Halloween movie pick.
Very good. You can't go wrong with that.
You can't go wrong with that. You got great comedy. You got some ghosts. You got the Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd phenomenon there, and you got the all-time great line in there of like Ray, like when they ask you, I forget what the exact line is, but it was like, Ray, when they ask you about this, you say yes. I love that one. So I love that movie. Ghostbusters 2 is also a good choice, but I will go with Ghostbusters 1.
Let me ask you something. I know there's like conspiracy theories out there or fan theories. Do they die when they cross streams at the end of 1?
I do not think they die. I think they got out of there. That's my hunch, because I feel like we would have had a more interesting angle with 2 if they'd actually died, but I feel like they lived.
And I got to say, Ghostbusters has one of the best characters in movie history, in my opinion. And it's not like a main character, but the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is such an image that is so iconic. It's just great.
Yeah, what'd you think of the reboot, by the way?
I did not see it.
I thought it got more heat than it deserved.
I'm sure people were hating it from the moment it was announced, and we've got another, I don't know if it's a reboot or considered a sequel coming up.
Kind of both.
Yeah, so I did not see it, not for any reason of like boycott or anything like that, just didn't get around to it.
Yeah, it's not bad. Like, it's not great by any means, but it's not like the abomination people make it out to be.
That's fair.
Yeah. All right, where do you go with your next one?
My next pick is going to be a song, a truly Halloween-themed song. It's a classic. I'm going to draft the Monster Mash.
Oh, you got to take the Monster Mash.
It's the Graveyard Smash.
Absolutely. I mean, you hear it everywhere around this time of year too. So you got to play a little Monster Mash when you're at your Halloween Zoom party on Saturday.
Absolutely, it's a must.
Yeah, I do remember too. You and I, as kids of the '90s, you remember like they kind of made jokes about it, and like there were like Power Rangers episodes of Halloween where they would make jokes about Monster Mash. I don't think they actually used the song.
No, and probably for copyright issues. But the speaking of Power Rangers, do you remember the rapping pumpkin villain?
I might watch that episode on Halloween, to be honest with you.
What a great villain. I can't remember his name. I will look it up while we're on the phone.
I think it was something really stupid. I think it was something really like pumpkin rapper or something dumb like that.
His name was the Pumpkin Rapper.
Holy shit, I got that right.
Oh, wow. That is so funny. And he has a Funko Pop figure.
Yeah. Ooh, I did not know that. I might have to order that one.
Yeah. Okay, real quick. Power Ranger villains, because I was the biggest Power Ranger fan as a child.
Yep.
The Pudgy Pig
Okay.
was always iconic, but I'd have to say the two that that's third place for me. Pumpkin Rapper, fourth place. Second place would have to be the Stoplight Turtle. I don't know if you remember him.
I think I do.
He was like a turtle who had a stoplight on his head.
Yeah, it was.
And then number one was a toad who ate them, and when he ate them, their pictures would appear on his belly.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember which other. I think the one that struck out to me, I think was like the one where they were fighting the monster where they had to play football. That monster was actually, I think, my number one.
Oh, I remember that one. Yes.
Yeah, I don't remember his name, but like it was such a fun fight. I remember that one.
All good stuff. Great show. Great show.
Does not age very well, but it is a fun nostalgia trip. Yeah, I'll just for the laughs, I'm gonna take that Halloween episode as my second pick. And I probably will watch on Halloween, so I'll take that one.
Wow, honorable for that show.
Yeah. I think it's fun. It's a nice, easy 22 minutes of your life. It's even less. I think on Netflix it's like 19 minutes of airtime, so you really can just do that within less than half an hour. It's fun, nostalgia trip, and you can laugh at Pumpkin Rapper. There you go.
Is Power Rangers on Netflix?
Yes, it's on Netflix.
Unbelievable. I've got some television watching to do.
Yeah, I think they have like every season of the show, I think including all the random spin-offs they've had after the original ones. So like if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, you can. But like I think I watched the originals, I kind of stopped there.
No, I'm not watching anything after the original.
Yeah. Okay, so where are you going?
All right, so
next pick.
My third pick, I thought about going like different media. I thought about throwing in a Resident Evil or something like that in the video game sphere because there are so many horror-themed video games. But I did not think it would be fair because I am not well-versed in the actual gameplay. So I think to draft it would be insincere. So I just want to honorable mention video games in the horror world and the Halloween world. But with my third pick, I am taking Beetlejuice.
That's a good one. Friend of the podcast, Will Schneider, is sort of trying to Beetlejuice into existence, domesticating Francisco Lindor.
Oh, wow. Well, he should Beetlejuice into existence. Bill de Blasio not trying to stop the sale. That might be the scariest thing that happened this Halloween is if he has some say in the matter. But Beetlejuice, I mentioned it before. My fiance had never seen the movie. We watched it last week. I love it even more as I get older because I get more of the jokes that I didn't get the last time I watched it, probably like 15 years ago. And now that I've seen all of Schitt's Creek, just to see Catherine O'Hara playing what was like the OG Moira Rose in Beetlejuice, along with like so many great moments, so many great jokes. People don't realize that Beetlejuice himself only has like 15 minutes of screen time, but when he's on, it's pretty impactful. What a fun ride that movie is.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. I did enjoy Beetlejuice at the time. Like, if I was to use the Beetlejuice power, I would almost like to use it, like, say 3 times and get Adam Gase off the Jets. That would be my use of Beetlejuice's power.
That might be a waste, because I do think it's going to happen sooner rather than later. Let me ask you, real quick, Jets, who leaves the Jets first, Adam Gase or Quinnen Williams?
Adam Gase.
Okay.
I'm convinced of that. And they're not going to trade Quinnen Williams.
All right, well, I would hope not, because he's improving, is he not?
He is. He's getting much better.
What do you got for your third pick?
All right, my third pick, I'm going to go with a horror movie that is a more recent addition, but like one that I think is a fun rewatch, especially with the use of the found camera footage. I would go with Cloverfield as my third pick.
Interesting. I would love to watch that again because I honestly haven't seen it since theaters.
Yeah, because I watched it in the theater. I watched it again about 2 years ago. I remember I liked it more 2 years ago than I did in the theater. So I do think revisiting Cloverfield is definitely a worthwhile experience.
Now, are you familiar with the theory at the end, the satellite crashing into the ocean?
Yeah, I've heard that theory. Refresh my memory, though. It's not top of mind.
Basically, the very end of the film, they're sitting on like a Ferris wheel or something. And in like the very distant like view, you can see something crash into the water. So
yes.
People theorize that it's the monster crash landing onto Earth. They think it's the Cloverfield paradox spaceship. There's like all these theories about what it is. So I
Yeah.
was going to ask you what your theory is.
Yeah, I do remember that theory now you mentioned it. I've subscribed to the theory that it's like the monster crashing into the water because I do think it sort of ties into the sequel, 10 Cloverfield Lane. I think it's something that they sort of exploit in the background, sort of say it's not over.
10 Cloverfield Lane, by the way, what a good movie.
Very underrated movie.
And the John Goodman performance is A+.
Yeah, I think like that's one like I put a like I actually went on John Stanko's podcast, friend of the podcast, Stanko Stands recently. I think actually last year we talked about our favorite movies of the previous decade, and 10 Cloverfield Lane made my list.
Wow, that's high praise.
Yeah, I was a big fan of that movie. I thought it was much better than the original. But I think in terms of pure Halloween fare, I think Cloverfield itself is better.
For sure, for sure. My final pick is Stranger Things.
Oh, I don't know how I forgot that. That's a good call.
Yeah, it's very Halloweeny to me. It's a perfect mosh of all things sci-fi from the 80s, horror from the 80s. And, you know, in season 2, you had kids in Michael Myers masks. You know, it's a collection of the best of Halloween media, all thrown into one, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can't wait for Stranger Things season 4 to come out. Presuming at some point, maybe towards Halloween next year, I'm guessing is when we'll see it.
Yeah, I'm also interested to see if they're going to have like big time monster elements or if it's going to be more of a Hopper versus the Russians deal. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, because I mean, we did end like season 3 with like with them basically bringing out a Demogorgon again, which feels like that's sort of low stakes after what we've had the first 3 seasons. So I feel like there's got to be something bigger coming.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, I'm never a fan of the villain in the sequel being like a lesser version of the first movie's villain.
Yeah.
And Stranger Things 2 had the demo dogs as opposed to the Demogorgons. But I want to go back on that because I learned recently that the demo dogs are just younger versions of the big Demogorgon.
Yeah.
So it's not like they copped out and just made another version of the Demogorgon. It's all in line with its like growth. So I think now it's even better knowing that because I was holding a lot against it for that, what I thought was like kind of a lazy villain for season 2. But I do think ultimately it's just so well done across the board. So I like it even more now.
Yeah, okay. For my last pick, I'm trying to think here because I have a couple ways I could go. I mean, I was thinking about doing Blair Witch Project. I feel like it's too similar to Cloverfields. I want to offer a little variety here. I thought about doing the Toy Story special on Halloween, like Toy Story of Terror. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but that's always pretty fun to just get that in. But I'll go with the classic to protest the fact that it's no longer on free TV. I'll go with the Charlie Brown Halloween special. It's the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown.
The same way you said, I can't believe I didn't think of Stranger Things. That's how I feel about your last pick.
Yeah, because that infuriates me to no end that it's now no longer on like ABC every fall. It's gonna be on Apple TV going forward.
Yeah, Peanuts cut that Apple deal, which is very upsetting.
Yeah, they really did, because like that was one thing I always look forward to, because ABC every year would have like the special going with like they would put the It's a Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown on, and they would do the Toy Story Terror right afterwards. That's always like an easy hour just to like sit back and just get in the Halloween spirit.
Absolutely, and it's a great special. The Great Pumpkin, and every year as we got older, it always looked less and less clean, like the animation. Like when we were young, it looked fine. Like that was great. But every year it looks older and more dated, but it's still got that charm. It's still got that nostalgia, and it can't miss.
It's just like Power Rangers. It gets worse and worse the further away you get from it. It still has that nostalgia.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, Alan, I also think it's a lot of fun. And as I got to say, as a pop culture guy, it's nice to see that some of these shows are finally coming back now. We speculated, I think, back in August that like, nope, that we're going to wait till November to sort of get things back, and stuff is starting to trickle onto the air. But one thing I noticed, I've been reading online, is that a lot of these shows are going to have like shorter orders because it's more expensive to produce TV in the COVID era. So we've seen, like, I saw like a CBS, I think it's basically cutting all the shows down to either 16 or 18 episodes as opposed to the usual 22. So I'm wondering if they think we're going to get like more random stuff thrown in at some point this year.
It reminds me of when the writer's strike happened.
Yeah.
So, I mean, hey, something is better than nothing.
Something is better than nothing. And I do wonder, they said, back to our big brother at the top of the thing, they said we're going to see it again in the summer in the usual spot. Would you be shocked if we got some kind of celebrity version again to sort of fill airtime?
I'd be shocked just because it's such a beast to put together. And I think because summer is, they don't have the full, August, or when does it usually end? September?
It usually ends in September. I was talking about the celebrity style season where you have like 3 weeks that you're running short on content.
You mean between now and next full season?
Yeah. I think we might get a shortened celebrity thing, some kind of deal, because I think that could be a possibility.
I mean, the show is such a beast to put together. It might be tough, but that'd be welcomed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at it, though, like, the house is already built. Like, if you told them in, like, December, like, hey, be ready for March or something, like, I think they could get something together.
That'd be great. I'd be welcoming to that for sure.
All right, Alan, thanks for all the time. I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, how can people find on social media, keep up with some of the stuff you're up to?
At Allen, ALLEN, _Austin_ on Twitter. And on Instagram, it's at Allen Austin Sports. And I'm looking to up my social media game, Mike. So now's the perfect time to follow me because it's gonna be pretty active from here on out.
Absolutely will. Alan, thanks again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. Always a pleasure. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.